Good morning, Europe. It's Tuesday, the 22nd of May. Our headlines for you. Unfriending Facebook. EU politicians get ready to grill Mark Zuckerberg days before tough new privacy laws. And over in the Cube, our social media news desk.
So did you really read those new Facebook terms, and what have you signed up to? In the Cube, we're going to break that down for you.
Maximum pressure. America's top diplomat threatens Iran with, quote, the strongest sanctions in history, angering Tehran. Grinding to a halt. Flights cancelled and transport chaos as 9 unions unite against Emmanuel Macron. And how's this for etiquette? Days after the royal wedding, guests are peddling their gift bags online. Thank you for starting your day with us. Our top story, days before tough new privacy laws take effect across Europe, the man many see as an enemy of privacy will appear before EU lawmakers. Mark Zuckerberg will be in Brussels in damage control, defending Facebook in the wake of the Cambridge Analytica scandal. And it comes as the social media giant tries desperately to restore its image with a marketing blitz on the other side of the Atlantic.
Facebook will do more to keep you safe and protect your privacy, so we can all get back to what made Facebook good in the first place. Friends.
That's likely the message Zuckerberg will be touting to members of the European Parliament. The big question, what kind of a reception will he be receiving following last month's appearance before U.S. Congress? Our Brussels correspondent Brian Carter spoke to MEPs who will be in the room with Zuckerberg today.
If you have one question for Mr. Zuckerberg, what's your question to him?
What is he going to do to change the business model of Facebook so that that kind of data abuse won't happen again? And so far, he gave no real assurances to the U.S. Congress. Well, we will require more than just nice talk and empty promises.
There's widespread fear across the EU that a Cambridge Analytica-like scandal could sway the results of next year's EU elections in favor of Eurosceptic parties. But politicians are not the only ones paying attention. Lobby watchdog groups say Facebook is actively acting behind the scenes to influence legislation. Last year alone, Facebook secured dozens of high-level meetings and spent close to 2.5 million euros on lobbying.
Facebook has been incredibly successful in getting what it wants. The main thing it wants is to avoid regulation. Facebook has pulled the wool over the European Commission's eyes and still manages, despite these scandals, to present itself as a trusted partner, as a benign digital giant who's going to take us into the future, building our digital economy, rather than the self-interested, profit-maximizing corporation who's ready to throw us under the bus in order to get its data collected and sold.
Another entity closely monitoring Facebook's activity is the Belgian Privacy Commission. Earlier this year, a Belgian court followed their argument and ruled that some of Facebook's data collection was excessive and devoid of valid consent.
Not everybody realizes this, but Facebook collects information not just when you're on the website, not just if you're a Facebook user, but also when you visit websites outside of Facebook. And it does this regardless of whether or not you have a Facebook account, whether you're signed up, and regardless of whether or not you're logged in.
And Brian Carter joins me now live from Brussels. Brian, what are we expecting Zuckerberg to tell MEPs today?
Well, Mark Zuckerberg will speak in the European Parliament here behind me, and he's very much on a charm offensive. He'll talk about Europe and how Europe is important to Facebook and how Europe shares the same values as Facebook. He'll also mention the various technologies that have enabled, for example, Europeans to mark safety checks during the various terrorist attacks in European cities, or how Facebook is being used by refugees to stay in touch with their families and loved ones, and how businesses across Europe are using Facebook. And then he'll apologize almost exactly in the same way he apologized in front of the U.S. Congress. He'll say, quote, whether it's fake news, foreign interference in elections, or developers misusing people's information, we didn't take a broad enough view of our responsibilities. That was a mistake, and I'm sorry. So this meeting really comes at a crucial time. Europeans are currently discussing a new regulation on e-privacy. They're talking about the best ways to tackle fake news. And of course, in 3 days, on Friday, the new data protection regulation will come into force.
All right, thank you for that, Brian Carter, live in Brussels. Now, if you have a Facebook account, you're likely to have already signed new terms and conditions, but do you know exactly what you're signing up for? Alex in theCUBE has more for this.
Absolutely, Tessa. Well, welcome to theCUBE. Here, our team in our social media centre are monitoring the stories trending worldwide. They're debunking, they're fact-checking, and breaking things down. Now, if you're on Facebook, as Tessa was just saying there, you've probably been getting those pop-ups. You know, the pop-ups like this one. Lots of text to scroll through and a big blue button at the bottom that simply says, accept and continue. And look, let's face it, most of us, when we're confronted with these kind of terms and conditions, we've probably pushed the accept and continue. But what are we accepting? We've been digging into that a little bit. One thing we want to point out is you are accepting that your information can be gathered even when you're not on Facebook. Look at this, right? We've pulled this up here. You are accepting that Facebook can track your activities on other websites and apps that are somehow linked to Facebook. For example, they could have the like button. We see that almost everywhere, don't we? And then look at this point at the bottom. You don't even have to be on the internet, let alone not being on Facebook. They're saying here you're accepting that you could go to a cycling helmet shop and buy a cycling helmet offline in the real world, and that information could still be used to feed and inform the adverts that are targeted at you on Facebook. Let's not forget, Facebook makes nearly 100% of its income from adverts, and they want to target those adverts at you using your data. And I just want to pull up that button. You don't have to finish scrolling down to read all the information before this lovely button is at the bottom. Big and blue, accept and continue. Experts pointing out this is quite manipulative. It's nudging you at every stage to say, I'll accept, without necessarily going into the grey button here, managing your settings. Well, Mr. Zuckerberg will have the chance to answer people's concerns later. What are your concerns? Let us know at any stage on any story what you think using #theCUBE.
Thank you for that, Alex, and the CUBE team. Now, Mark Zuckerberg is scheduled to meet with EU lawmakers at 6:15 p.m. Central European Time, and you can watch that live coverage here and his testimony on Euronews and Euronews.com. Now, today is the second of what are sure to be many emotionally charged days at the Grenfell Tower inquiry. Day one opened with 72 seconds of silence for 72 people who lost their lives when the fire raged through the London high-rise last year. Our correspondent Vincent McAvenny is outside the inquiry in London. Vincent, we've already heard some of that emotionally charged testimony from the family and friends. Tell us more.
Good morning, Tessa. Well, yes, it's already proving very harrowing to sit through this testimony here at the Gloucester Millennium Hotel, where this inquiry got underway. We're not far from Grenfell Tower itself. And in these first 2 weeks, we're just going to be hearing from the friends and family of the 72 victims. In pre-recorded videos and statements, the bereaved are sharing some light on the lives that were lost. Now, the first to speak was Marcio Gomez. He and his wife and two daughters escaped their flat on the 21st floor. But later that morning, his son, who you'll see in a sonogram here as Marcio speaks, became the youngest victim when he was born stillborn. Now, later we also heard from a victim himself, Mohammed Nida, who sent a voicemail to his family. He was an Afghan-born refugee who escaped the Taliban. He lived on the top floor of Grenfell Tower, and his body was found nearby to it. Here is some of that testimony.
So I held my son in my arms that evening, hoping it was all a bad dream. Wishing, praying for any kind of miracle, that he would just open his eyes, move, make a sound. But as we know, that never happened.
Well, some incredibly emotional scenes already. There are counsellors and NHS doctors on standby here to help people through this. And after this initial 2 weeks, we'll then move into hearing from residents, the emergency services and officials about exactly what happened on the 14th of June last year, so they can build up a detailed timeline of how that fire spread.
All right, thank you so much for that, Vincent McAvenny, live in London. Now, another day, another strike in France. But today could be different as 9 of the public service unions had, in a rare show of unity, gotten together to go against President Emmanuel Macron's reforms. Now, we have the latest with a correspondent, Annelise Borges, in Paris. Annelise, what can we expect today?
Well, there are many actions organized today, especially a march that will take place here in Paris. And the question really is, will the government bow to the pressure? So far, the French government of Emmanuel Macron has shown a lot of resolve. The French president seems determined to bring about change, but not everyone here agrees with his vision for France's future. Many believe that he is going too fast and too far. I spoke to one person who embodies this way of thinking, Philippe Martinez, the head of France's largest trade union. And I asked him whether there was nothing on Emmanuel Macron's proposed reforms that was positive or even necessary.
His reforms are neither positive nor necessary. Mr. Macron has a vision of the world that many people are familiar with. More liberalism, more individualism. And for us it's simple. Is the world going well? Is poverty diminishing or progressing in the world? We can see it in France, but in other parts of the world too. Are we confronted with more insecurity? And his reforms, the more they advance, the more we give to those who already have a lot, and we ask to those who have nothing to share nothing.
The world has changed a lot. You talk about pensions. We now live much longer. We may need to adapt, no? Do you think there is still space for your France in today's world?
There's never been more need for a France like that. Are there less millionaires on the planet than 20 years ago? No. There are more. Are the millionaires making less money? No. They're making more. So we live on a deeply unequal planet, and inequalities are deepening. There's a lot of money because technological progress allows us to make money, but this money is not always going to the right places. And so we can finance a solidarity society. We can continue to work towards making everyone's situation better. Give everyone a job. Well, the rich might have one yacht less, or one Porsche, or one Ferrari less, or maybe one castle less. But one thing is certain, they won't end up on the street.
So a very compelling message, one that resonates with a lot of people here in France, many of whom will be taking to the streets later today.
Thank you for that. Annelise Borges keeping an eye on developments today. And still to come for you on Good Morning Europe, the strongest sanctions in history, the new threat from U.S. Secretary of State Pompeo to Iran. The Cube has the international reaction. And a new threat in Hawaii as lava flows into the ocean from the Kilauea volcano, creating toxic gas. But first, here's a look at your weather. You're watching Good Morning Europe. Our top story under scrutiny in Brussels. Mark Zuckerberg faces a grilling by senior EU figures today over the alleged abuse of Facebook users' data. According to a Facebook statement, Zuckerberg will apologize in his opening remarks for the sale of personal information to the controversial political consultancy Cambridge Analytica. Now, the U.S. has been slammed by Iran for promising to impose, quote, the strongest sanctions in history on the country. Now, here's what the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo had to say.
The sting of sanctions will be painful if the regime does not change its course from the unacceptable and unproductive path it has chosen to one that rejoins the League of Nations. These will indeed end up being the strongest sanctions in history when we are complete.
In a tweet, Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif dismissed the speech as a, quote, sham, saying the U.S. was, quote, regressing to old habits and it would suffer the consequences of its failed policies. So how did Pompeo's speech play out around the world? Alex, in the Bell, that is, in the Social Cube, has more for us. Bell.
Yeah, absolutely. We're a big team here in the Cube. And of course, Tessa, I want to remind you that this is the first time we've heard from the US administration on its new Iran policy since it effectively pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal 10 days ago. That's a long time not to hear from the US. Now, here in the Cube, what we do is we sift through all of the information coming into us online, be it from politicians, be it from traditional news sources, or be it from regular Twitter or social media users like you. So please do keep those comments coming in. I want to bring your attention to a politician, first of all, a politician close to home, the UK Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, who says this new jumbo Iran treaty, bit of irony sensed in that jumbo, is going to be very, very difficult. Now, that is a view that is echoed by the EU in the form of Federica Mogherini, who says there is no alternative to the JCPOA, that's the Iran nuclear deal. Now, there's a real sense here in Europe that this new US policy is going to penalise it's going to obstruct European business ties with Iran, something that potentially could lead to an all-out trade war if we're not lucky. I just want to show you one more tweet from Iran, because, of course, this story is raising a few eyebrows here in Iran. The speech, this is from an Iranian Tehran-based journalist, the speech was a regime change checklist and not a framework for US news strategy. Is that the US's real intention, regime change? What do you think? Please do get in touch with us, #TheCube.
All right, thank you for that, Bell. Thank you. Now, Italy's populist coalition government in waiting has put forward a political novice as its choice for prime minister. Giuseppe Conte will take on the role if the country's president gives the green light. Claudio Lavanga has more for us live from Rome. Hi there, Claudio. Who is Giuseppe Conte, and why is the coalition's interest to have a political newcomer as prime minister?
Well, Tessa, that's exactly the same question that was in everybody's mind yesterday when Giuseppe Conte's name came up. Who is Giuseppe Conte? Because honestly, until yesterday, he was relatively unknown to everybody, the public, the general public, the media, and the world of politics. What we know is that he's a 54-year-old professor of law, specializes in public administration. He teaches in two private universities, one in Florence and one in Rome. At least according to his curriculum, he has a long and international career in law, but he has no experience in politics, which raises the fears or the suspicions by critics that he is some kind of yes man, some figurehead for Di Maio and Salvini to just implement the measures that they have clearly laid out on the so-called contract of a government for a change. Some measures that include massive cuts, billions of cuts in taxes, massive public spending, and a rollback on pension reform, which will cost an enormity, at least according to estimates, 50 billion euro per year, 50 billion that Italy does not have because Italy has the second biggest public debt in Europe, and that is causing concerns across Europe and the markets. Tessa?
Thank you for that. Claudio Lavanga reporting live from Rome. And to Hawaii now, where lava from the Kilauea volcano has reached the Pacific Ocean for the first time and creating a new toxic threat. NBC's Miguel Almaguer reports from the island.
Exploding to life, Kilauea is moving faster, spreading farther. A river of lava pouring into the ocean, where magma cascades into the water, layers is formed. a haze of hydrochloric acid mixing with shards of volcanic glass, dangerous to breathe. Just like the sulfur dioxide and ash blanketing the air.
The ash is falling. It's very foggy, and the sulfur is very high right now.
So you can certainly feel the heat and the power at times. The ground here shakes. These geysers of lava are shooting more than 100 feet into the air. We're in a residential neighborhood. That's a concern. We're also less than a quarter mile away from a geothermal plant. If this met that, it would certainly be a disaster. And all of this lava is pouring right into the ocean.
With molten fireballs launching through the sky, a high-velocity lava bomb catapulted into its first victim.
Daryl!
Mark Clausen rushing to help his neighbor struck in the leg.
Daryl!
His friend rushed to the hospital as Clausen stops the home from burning.
The railing had been smashed. It was about a 12-pound rock, had glanced off the railing and obviously hit him.
With new fissures splitting the earth open, lava is rolling over a highway, cutting off escape routes. At least 4 more homes destroyed. Herschel Hood lost more than just his house.
We have 2 cats. They wouldn't leave, so I said goodbye to them. And everything else.
Tonight, a spectacular display of nature's power. In the air, on the ground, and now out at sea.
Miguel Almaguer reporting there. Now, how much would you pay for a piece of the royal wedding? The Cube reveals a small fortune some sellers are demanding online for goodie bags. But first, here's a look at your weather. You're watching Good Morning Europe. Welcome back. Now, you weren't invited to the royal wedding. Don't worry, you can actually take a piece home with you. Alex is going to tell us how.
Very true, Tessa. You might not have bagged yourself and invited to the royal wedding. Sadly, we didn't. But you can still take home a bag from the royal wedding. Have a look at this. These are the goodie bags that people were given. I suppose goodie bags are a bit of an informal term. These are the tote bags that people were given full of goodies when they attended the royal wedding. And those include a water bottle. It's H&M here. Yes, Harry and Meghan in this case. A big gold coin at the bottom down here. There's also an order of service. There's some shortbread as well. Now, people are selling these online. Derek found some on eBay this morning, and they're being sold everywhere. This particular one, you can buy it now for £30,000. So if you want to take home a piece of the royal wedding, you can see it quite nicely laid out there. You see, we can actually have a little look at that. You've got the order of service as well. You've got the large coin. You've got the commemorative shortbread. All of that could cost you £30,000. Or if you want to enter a bidding war, at the moment the bids are around £2,500. But people selling their royal wedding bags, what do you think? Is that rude? Is that okay? Would you do it? Would you buy one? Hashtag theCUBE, let us know.
Thank you so much for that, Alex. Very interesting. Well, thank you for joining us here on Good Morning Europe. Do stay with Euronews for more. And in the meantime, we'll leave you with today's No Comment from Hawaii.